to another lane. I didn't see those massive truck next to me. Old man.
I didn't see it, Cars Adams.
Couldn't even get out of the car. Went out of the car for a second. Not empty the truck. He said, came home with my car. It was a little story.
Okay, so let's just do a quick chazara of the halachas that I at least remember from carbon oil of the. So the two main shitas that we have in carbon oil of the are Rabbi Yosy who says that both a Kohen HaMashiach as well as a Nasi does not bring a carbon oil of the at all. And then we had a shita of Rabbi Akiva who said, I agree with you by a par Kohen HaMashiach, but by a Kohen HaMashiach, that is, but by a Nasi, I hold he does bring a carbon oil of the except for the chait of Shmias Koil Allah, because a Nasi, a Melech, doesn't have to say Edus. So that's the first machlokes. Then the question is, if a Kohen HaMashiach does not bring an oil of Yerid, according to Rabbi Yosy, he's Potter and Gansen, but according to Rabbi Akiva, he's still mechuyev to bring a par helam davar shel tzibur. It has a status of any other chiyuv kares. And then we have the shita of Reb Shimon. Then we have the shita of Reb Shimon, who says that he says that the Hanasi. So let's have a look at it. All of the mitzvahs of the Torah that have an oil of Yered, a Nasi brings a Seir and a Mashiach and Bezdin Mevin Par, Lavod Kachavim, Hayachid Mashiach, maybe say no, Kamil Shabbatar Shachiyav Nazan and Kars, Chatas, I'm sorry. Only she goes in Chatas, but 1 second, I'm getting mixed up. Here it is. Al Shmiyas Koil. The albito is fasayim, while Tumash Miktus Vekadoshav, so the carbon oil of Yerid, Beznar Peturin, Yochid, and Nasi and Mashiach are Chayovin. Elo she'ein kan God Mashiach Chayiv al Tumash Miktus Vekadoshav. Divrei Reb Shimon. So you have Reb Shimon Shita who holds that on the carbon oil of Yerid, Anochi, Yochid, and the Nasi is chayiv. Yochid, a Nasi, and a Kohen is chayiv. The only difference is that the Kohen is potter for an oil yard al tumas mikdash v'kadoshav, because we learned that according to Reb Shimon, he's exempt from tumas mikdash v'kadoshav. And then the last machlokes that we have in reference to carbon oil yard is what they bring for the carbon oil yard. So a regular yochid brings the carbon oil yard depending on what his financial level is. But Rabbi Elazar says a Nasi always brings a seir, no matter what. And we had Rabbi Yochanan who told us that when Rabbi Elazar says a Nasi brings a seir, that's only by Tumash Mikdash V'Kadoshav, which would lead to a Chiyav Chatos otherwise. And therefore a Nasi brings, I'm sorry, not because it's a Chiyav Chatos, forget it's because we derive it as chorus. For Tumash Mikdash V'Kadoshav, that's the only one of the three Averis that brings an Oil of Yerid, that if it was mazid, there would be a Chiv Karis. Therefore, Rabbi Elazar says that a Nasi always brings a Seir for it. So even though a Nasi brings a Seir, and even though it's a mitzvah that would be Chayiv Karis, if it was done b'mazid, it still wouldn't bring a Nashim Tali, because we know a Nashim Tali is only brought on something that if it was Vadai, if it was over the Aver Vadai, he would bring a Korban Chatos. And we know that a Nasi at least brings a Seir for Tumash Mikdash V'Kadoshav. So you might have a Havmina to say that such a Aver would also lead to a Korban Nashim Tali, Kamash Rulan, that it does not, and that was Rabbi Yochanan Talal. Okay. We actually started the next parak, but we might as well start from the Mishnah again because it's a new beginning. So Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Kohen Mashiach Shechata He did the Avera when he was a Kohen HaMashiach, the Achach over Mimishichusai, and then he became Ois Mashiach. It means he became Ois Kohen Gadol, that is. Okay. V'chei Nosi, Shechata. In the Chaim Mandal last night by the Chasna, he brought to my attention that a Kohen HaMashiach is not a regular Kohen Gadol. The Kohen HaMashiach is only during the first Beis HaMikdash when they still had the Shem and the Mishra. In the second Beis HaMikdash, they didn't have the Shem and the Mishra. Most of us in Camp Aguda, when we used to have a Mishnah Palpek on this every year, everyone learned Megillah. That was one of the easy ones. So there's a whole parak of Ein Beins, right? Ein Bein is. So it starts with Ein Bein Adarish and Sheni. So one of them is Ein Bein Kohen HaMashiach, L'Kohen HaMeruba Begadim. And the Kohen Mashiach was in the first Beis English when they still had the Shema Mishra. Hello, I forgot what the difference was. I don't remember my Mishnah is Palpeh. Do you remember that Mishnah? Ein Bein? Oh. So the question is, do all these halachas also apply? Sorry, the question is, do all these halachas apply to a Kohen Gadol in the second Beis English? I don't know. Okay, so Zok to Gemara Omer. And that was the first mission that everybody learned. But hey, I'm from Saragrim, right? Okay. Or if a Nasi did an Avera while he was a Nasi, so what would the halacha be? So the Kohen Mashiach would maybe par because the Avera was done when he was a Kohen Mashiach. The Hanasi may be Seir because the Avera was done when the Nasi was still in power. But Mashiach Sha'avar Mashiachusai. The Achakachata, what if his Avera was done after his career as a Kohen Gadol? The Nasi Sha'avar Mugdulasai, the Achachata, or Nasi who did an Avera after he was Ois king. So the halacha is Kohen Mashiach Mevi par. The Kohen Mashiach still brings a par, meaning even if he did an Avera after he's Ois Kohen Gadol, he retains his status of a Kohen Gadol, and he still brings a par on Dom Tzibur. But Van Nasi Gedit, the Nasi goes back to his regular status. Okay. Zok Tahil Gemara. Hashta Yeshleimer. Avar Memishichusai. We already said the halacha in the safe of our Mishnah that a Kohen Gadol, even a former Kohen Gadol, brings a carbon as if he was a Kohen Gadol. So Hashta Yeshleimer Avar Memishichusai. The Akachata Mevi Par. Why do I need to ratio the Mishnah? If he even retains the status of a Kohen Gadol after his Ois Kohen Gadol, that if he did an Aver then, he still has the status of a Kohen Gadol. Surely if the Chet was done while he was a Kohen Gadol, so why do we need the Mishnah to tell me the halacha of the Kohen Gadol in the ratio? It says by Nosi, Maisi, he brings like a hedjit. So the Pasha says, since it says this parallel halacha by the Nasi, so too it says it by the par. So Rashi gives a little bit more flavor, and Rashi explains by the Nasi we need both halachas. We need the halacha that once he's ois nasi, he has the din of a regular yachid. But if he did the avera while he was a nasi, then he brings the carbon like a nasi. That's halacha that's relevant. Once it's telling you that halacha, it tells you the halacha par. Yeah. I guess if the Gemara has a better term, it uses. I guess is only as a last resort. It seems. The Tana Rabbanon, the Hikriv al Chatosei. So it says in reference to a par helam dorish al tzibor, the hikriv al chatasoi. He brings a carbon, a par on his avera. Melamed shemevi chatasoi misha avar. It teaches us that al chatasoi on the avera that he did, even though now he's no longer a kohen gadol, he still brings the carbon for that avera. Sheyachal, I would have thought that I don't need a pasuk to teach this to me. Because Valadinu, if you can figure this out on your own. Umanosi shemevi b'shugas ma'isa madich anosi, who he does bring a carbon chatos if he did the same thing that any yachid would do. Just as Sugarless Maisa. He ate what he thought was Shuman. It turned out that it was Chayla. No psak before, like a regular chatas, like a regular person he brings. So he's more prone to regular chatois. Yet, ein mevi chatasoi misha avar. He doesn't bring his special carbon once he's ois nosi. But Mashiach, she'ein mevi b'shugas ma'ase. Mashiach, according to Mashiach, is less prone because he doesn't even bring a regular chatos like a yochid if he mixed up and he ate a piece of chaylev thinking that it was shuman. Ela al helam davarim shugas ma'ase. He needs a more complicated sequence of events to trigger a carbon chatos. Loy kol shagain. Surely he shouldn't bring the same carbon. Talmud Loimar vehikriv al chatasoi melamed shemevi al chatasoi misha avar. It teaches us that he even brings his carbon, even though he's less prone to bring carbonis, he still brings it on his old aver. Fact Gemara v'naisi nami nasi mikavachomer. You had a kavachomer that he shouldn't bring it once he's ois kohen gadol. You have a kavachomer to say that he shouldn't bring it when he's ois kohen gadol. So I actually didn't touch his good. This means even if he's ois kohen gadol and he does an aver, now we have a pasuk that tells us even an aver that he does when he's already post kohen gadol, he's no longer kohen gadol, he still brings his special paril of Lovashal Tzibur. But now that we know that by a kohen gadol starts way, and we already set it up that a nasi should for sure bring the carbon that the kohen gadol brings, because the nasi is more prone to bring carbonis. So now let's use the kavachomer to teach us from kohen to nasi. Who doesn't bring a carbon chatos if he just had a shugas maisa. Nevertheless, maybe chatos misha'avar. He'll bring a part of a kohen Mashiach, even though he's ois kohen gadol. So nasi should maybe chatos b'shugas maisa. A nasi who his carbon is triggered so much more easy with the mere shugas maisa. Ain't it in? Should maybe chatos misha'avar. Surely he should also bring his special chatos, even though he is no longer a nasi. Talmud Loimer asher nasi yechta. Davka kishu nasi in kishu hedjit loy. We have a pasuk that's being megala by a kohen gadol that he does bring the same par, even though his aver was done after he's always kohen gadol, and we have a ferish pasuk by nasi that tells us he'll only bring the special carbon of a nasi if he did the aver when he was a nasi. That explains the distinction in our Mishnah. Zok tahelig Mishnah weiter chatu ad shaloi nismanu. They did an avera. In this case, we actually had already. They did an avera before they became a nasi, before they became a kohen gadol, when they were a regular citizen. Hare elu kehedyotos. They're treated like hedyotos, meaning they bring the carbon of a yachid. They bring a standard carbon chatos. But Reb Shimon Omer, it depends. Im noidolahem achaloi nismanu. If not only did they do the chet before they became in this position, or and not only did they do the chet, they also found out that they did the chet. So the full carbon chatas was triggered because now they know about the avera. So then chayov, then they bring a regular chatas as a yachid would bring. But if they did the avera as an individual private citizen, and then they became a melech, and then they became a nasi, and then they found out about the avera. So now, first was there a chiyuv to bring the carbon chatos triggered, then Shimon der Pturin, because you need that the idea and the chait should be when they're in the same condition. And since the chait happened when they were private citizens, the idea happened when they were not private citizens, therefore they're potter in Gansen. Now Rashi points out something very important. That is, Rab Shimon would also hold Hu Adin, the Polag Rab Shimon Bereisha. Rab Shimon argues on the first Mishnah that we just learned. The Katani Nasi Shechata, Biachakach over Migdul Lasai maybe Seir, a Nasi who is Chayte. And then he became Ois Nasi. He still brings the Seir, right? That was the first halacha of our first Mishnah. Well, what if the Nasi didn't find out that he did the Avera while he was a Nasi? Maybe he only found out after he became Ois Nasi, so Reb Shimon there would hold his potter as well. Reb Shimon Kaminami, Misha Avar, if he first found out about the Avera after he's already Ois Nasi, the Ein Mevi Seir. Because once again, the Chata v'Yediyah boy Kishu Nasi. In order for him to bring a special carbon, he had to have done the Avera and found out about the Avera and actually triggered the Chatos when he was a Nasi. If you don't have both those components, he doesn't bring the carbon of a Nasi, but he doesn't bring the carbon of a Yachid either. He doesn't bring any carbon at all. What is a Nasi? That's a king. Meaning somebody who's nobody is above him. The only one who's above him is the Rebbeinu Shloim. Everyone else is below him, meaning he's a king. He's richer and more powerful than anybody. What? What? I hear. Okay, so let's go more weiter. Mina Hanamili. Could be up until now, we never discussed the case where a Nasi is completely potter from bringing carbon. So nobody was interested. Now that we know who's potter, it's a Nasi. Okay, so more. Mina Hanamili. How do you know that? How do you know that Dafka, while he's a Kohen Gadol, not if he did that very before? The Tanur Rabbanan Ima Kohen HaMashiach Yechta Prat LeKoidmos. If the Kohen HaMashiach does a chet, meaning while he's a Kohen HaMashiach, which excludes the averis that he did before he was a Kohen Gadol, that those he would not bring a special part for. Well, I didn't. Why do we need a pasuk? Maybe this we can also figure out from simple logic. Maybe b'shigas ma'isa. Madach who's more prone to bringing karbanis. He's maybe b'shigas ma'isa. Ein maybe ala kaid ma'is. Mishiach she'ein maybe ela al halam davar im b'shigas ma'isa. Ein oidin shelo yavi ala kaid ma'is. So I don't need a pasuk to tell you that a kohen gadol does not bring a special power for a various that he did before he became a kohen gadol. Zok Gemara lo yimamrit b'nasi shekein ein maybe chatasay mishavar. A nasi might not be so prone to bring karbanis. Yes, he brings the shugas ma'isa, but a nasi does not bring a special carbon of a nasi if he did avera after he's no longer a nasi. Where we just had a pasuk that says that the kohen gadol, even if he's a retired kohen gadol, he still brings a special part. So maybe maybe by the kohen gadol yavi ala koidmos, he should also bring the special part kohen gadol, even if the avera was before he became the kohen gadol. Hamoshiach yechta kata kishu Mashiach maybe kishu hedid ene maybe. The Tanya Nami Gabi Nasi, we have a similar brisa by a Nasi Kagavna in the same vein. It says Ashanosi yechta prat lekoidmos. V'aloydinu. Why do I need a pasuk of Ashanosi yechta prat lekoidmos? I have a kavachomer. Uma Mashiach shemayvi chatosu mishavar. Einay maybe ala koidmos. Nasi shein maybe chatosu mishavar. Einay din shaloyavi ala koidmos. So here the brass uses the opposite for it. Malam Mashiach shekein ein maybe b'shigas ma'isa. Time of Nasi should maybe b'shigas ma'isa. Hoyle maybe b'shigas ma'isa. You see a Nasi brings karbalos, brings more karbalos. Even with shigas ma'isa, maybe yavi ala koidmos. He should also bring the special carbon for a Nasi, even on the various that he did before he became a Nasi. Nasi echta shechata v'arehu Nasi v'loy shechata v'oidohu hedja. So the rule is anyone who did an avera before they received their special appointment of either kahuna or nesius, they are for sure going to bring the carbon of a hedjit, unless you hold like Reb Shimon that if the yediyah happened when he became a nasi already, so you don't have chet and yediyah ka'achas, according to Reb Shimon, he wouldn't bring any carbon at all. Of course, if he was a nasi or if he was a kohen gadol and he did the avera, by the nasi is chayiv for shugas ma'isa, by the kohen is only chayiv on helam davar and then shugas ma'isa, and then if they did the avera after they were ois Kohen Gadol, and after they're ois Nasi, the Nasi brings a carbon like a regular hedget, but the Kohen Gadol for the rest of his life always brings this special carbon, but only if there was a Helam Dover and then a Shivas Mice. Taner Rabban, Asher Nasi Yechta. Yochel Gzeira. It says Asher Nasi Yechta, when the Nasi will sin. It's mashma that the pasuk is telling us that the Nasi is going to sin. Zok Gemara Gzeira, Talmud Loimar Im Hakoyin Hamashiach Yechta. It's Im Malalon Lichashiachta. Just like when the pasuk is talking about a Kohen Gadol, it doesn't mean he will do an Aveir. It means if he happens to do an Aveir, then this is the carbon that he brings. Afghan, so too when the pasuk is talking about an Nasi, it's Lichashiachta, but not necessarily a Gzeira that he will do an Aveir. Amamar, so let's analyze this price. Yochel Gzeira. Why in the world would I think that there's a Gzeira that every Nasi is going to do an Aveir? Gzeira Mehechatesi. Arbri in. Yes, you do find sometimes there's such a thing. Where do you find it? Ashkechon dechsiv v'nasati nega tzeras b'veis eretz achuzaskan. When the Torah taught us about nige batim, the Torah doesn't say if there'll be a nega. The Torah says v'nasati, I will put negoyim in your houses. Besura hilahem. It's a besura to them. Shenegoyim boyim alayim. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda learns that the Torah is teaching us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring the goyim. You're going to have the goyim. If you remember, Rashi in Chumash says, why will Hashem bring the goyim? Because the goyim had hid money and valuables in their walls, and we would have never discovered them. So Hashem would bring the goyim that would lead to destroying homes so that they would uncover their treasures. Rabbi Shimon says, Prat le-nigei oinsin. It's just trying to tell us that nigei oinsin are not going to be tummy. What are nigei oinsin? The Gemara is going to discuss it later, but it means a nega that came machmas, a shade blowing on you, a shade who blew on the house, and that caused a nega. I don't know my shade didn't work, but that's such a nega would not be tummy. Lav Omer Rabbi Yehuda besura. Didn't Rabbi Yehuda learn that it's a besura? So you see, there is such a thing where the Torah is telling us this is going to happen, in fact. So therefore, Hachanami Ema Gzerahi. Maybe it's a besura as well that a Nasi will do an Aveira. Hilchach Ksiv Im, that's why it says Im by the Kohen Gadol to tell us that this whole parsha is only if, not that it will definitely happen. Zaktimar Ula Reb Shimon, Nigei Einchin Miloi Metamu. Reb Shimon just told us that Prat la Nigei Einchin. So you tell me Nigei Einchin is not Metama? But Tanya we learn, Adam Kiyeh, it says Adam Kiyeh Ba'ar B'Sari, we talk about Nega Tzaras. So we learn Minadiba Ve'elach. What if someone had a Nega before HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Mitzvah, the Parsha of Negoyim? That Nega will have zero impact. Only a Nega that comes on a person after the Tzivui, only that has the halach of Negoyim. V'aladinu. Why do I need a person of Adam Kiyeh? I should be able to figure it out without that. Hu Tameh B'Zov V'Tameh B'Negoyim. We know a person could become Tameh if he's a Zov, if he becomes a Zov. And we know a person could become Tameh if he has Negoyim. Ma Zov Minadiba Ve'elach. Just like a Zov, if someone says Ziva before the Tzivui of the Torah, it wouldn't be Tameh. He's only Tameh if he saw the Ziva after the Torah was Mitzvah. After Negoyim Minadiba Ve'elach. So why do I need a pasuk? Because loy mamet bezov shekain ein metama b'oinus. A zov is not metama b'oinus, right? There's certain conditions. If you jump, if you this, if you that, it can cause ziva. That wouldn't be a ziva of tuma. So therefore, tamer b'negoyim shemetama b'oinus. By a nega, it will be metama b'oinus. Talmud loymar adam kiyiyah minadibar ve'ela. So you do need a pasuk to tell you that only negoyim that come on a person after the Torah's tzivui are tamei, if someone already had a nega from before, he wouldn't be tamei. Rav Amar prat lenigei ruchis. Rav Papa Amar prat lenigei kshafim. So let's see if Rashi says what type of negas these are. Rav Amar loikasha hadikamer Rab Shimon prat lenigei einchin. So the kasha was you see that nigei einchin are metama. So how could Reb Shimon say that nigei einchin are not metama? So Rava answered, you know what Reb Shimon meant when he said prat nigei einchin? Because nigei ruchos da'idei nefichas shade v'loya de'adam. So nigei einchin that happened al yidei Adam. Something got hit. Something happened that brought on the nega. It's not just a naturally occurring machla. That taka is not going to be tummy. I'm sorry. That taka will not be. That will become tummy, right? Because we said that by negoim, even al yidei onis, it's only by a ziva al yidei onis that it's not tummy. But nega al yidei onis would be tummy. What Shimon meant when he said a nega al yidei onis is not tummy, he meant that it came al yidei neficha shade v'lo yidei adam. I don't know exactly how you determine if it was al yidei neficha shade, but that is what Shimon said. We learned from the pasuk what it comes tummy. The chitamer ben negoim shematamin is be'onis klina kol via. We know by nega it can occur on the skin after he has a hit, after he has a wound at ceiling, or after a burn at ceiling. That does qualify as a nega. That nega oinus is mitame, but not if it's al yidei nefichas shade, whatever that means. Papa Amar Kimar Shimon Prat nega oinus is al yidei kshafim to loy mitame. If someone al yidei kshafim got a nega, that's what's not mitame. But a regular nega will do mitame even boyd. So Shimon, when he said the word ointim, he didn't mamish mean ointim. He meant either nefichas shade or kshaf. Taner Rabban Asher Nasi Yechta Krat lechoyla. Mishum dahav lechoyla id chilei min susay. I don't understand. I'm sorry? If the Nasi was a choila and therefore he cannot practice as a Nasi anymore, so then he wouldn't have the status of a Nasi. So that's the Gemara's kasha. Just because he's a choila, he loses his malchus. Amar Rav Dimi Bar Chama, prat lenotich shenistareya. We're talking about a specific type of choili, and that is a Nasi that got tzaras, he could no longer act as a king. Shenema v'yinaga Hashem es hamelach. And because of that, he sat in the beis hachovshis, which Rashi tells us is the nasa chavshim in malchus. He became free from his malchus. Kehedjit domi. He has the status of a hedjit. Ve'eni maybe seir, and he will no longer bring a seir because he lost his status of a nosi. V'yosem Ben Amelach Alabais, and Yosy, the son of the king, had to now take over. That means he was an Evet until now, meaning he was burdened by his responsibility of being a Melech until now, but he lost that when he became a Mitzvah. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, have an Azli Besvinta, Bahadi. I'm sorry, they're traveling on a boat. A fascinating story. Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua were traveling on a boat. Bahadi the Rabbi Gamliel have a pita. Rabbi Gamliel brought along bread for the way. Now, bread only lasts a few days. Eventually, it goes stale. But Bahadi the Rabbi Shua have a pita, and even after his bread would get stale, he has visulta, so he would be able to bake fresh bread. Shalom pite de Rabbi Gamliel. I guess the journey lasted longer than expected, and because of that, the bread of Rabbi Gamliel was used up. It was depleted. So he was fortunate. Samach hasulte the Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua had plenty of silence. He made more bread, and even Rabbi Gamliel enjoyed the bread that Rabbi Yeshua made with his silence. Amar Leis, Rabbi Gamliel asked them, "This was only supposed to be a 2-day trip. I packed along food for 3 days. How do you know to pack along food for 6 days?" Miyav yodos the havaloni kuva kulahai the asa sulta. How do you think? How did you come to think that we would be so long delayed that you were prepared for it? Amar Le, what are you talking about? There's a star that appears once every 70 years, and most of the Mefarshim learn it's referring to Halley's Comet, which looks like a star which moves around in the sky, and therefore umasa es saponim. It fools us upon him. Why? Because when a ship navigator wants to confirm his heading, he looks at the position of the stars. So let's say he focuses on one star and he knows it's to the right of the ship. So he knows that if he continues to see the star to the right of the ship, he's going in the right direction. But if he sees it not to the left of the ship, he knows he's got a correct course. But Halley's Comet moves around in the sky, and therefore it will confuse the navigator as to where they're going. It comes, I think, every 76 years, but most of them learned that most of the professionals learned that's what Halley's Comet over here is. And he said, I knew around these years, I knew that it's possible that there'll be something like that. So I said, let me bring along extra food because it's possible we are going to get lost. Omer Leisu, Rabbi Gamliel was dispelled from Rabbi Yeshua. You're such a smart guy. And you have to travel for business. You should be able to make billions on the internet. With AI, you're a genius. You should figure these things out. You should know how to trade stocks. You should already be able to figure out how to make money. A smart guy like you shouldn't have to be traveling for business. That's for the schleppers like us. You're shocked that someone who's very smart doesn't necessarily have parnasa. Look at your own talmidim. You have talmidim. Rabbi Eliezer Chasima, Rabbi Yochanan and Good Gedah, they were unbelievable. They can tell you how many grains of moisture there are in the yam. And the Elam pas lechem, they're penniless. So you see, loy lechem lechem. So Rabbi Gamliel made a note. Nasan Daitoi made a mental note. Loy shivam barosh, that to give them positions as Rosh Yeshiva, as Rebbeim, when he comes back. And the Tashbat says, there's a nice raid bite from Shirley Borstein, that it's referring back to what we learned, that by a Kohen it says, Gadleu Mishalechav, by a Nasi it says he has to be made wealthy, but by a leader in Torah, by Rosh Yeshiva, also to become wealthy. Okay? Kisha'Allah, when he came back, Shalach Lachem, he sent them, he summoned them, because he wanted to appoint them to be in a position of Rosh Yeshiva, which would then cause that they will be made wealthy. And everyone knows every Rosh Yeshiva and every Rebbe, they're floating in money, right? So here they'll give them a position, they'll become wealthy. But they didn't want to come. You know, in the olden days, it used to be when someone became a Rosh Yeshiva, they made him wealthy. Nowadays, if you become wealthy, then you could become a Rosh Yeshiva. So times have changed. Anyway, he sent a second time for them, Ubol, and they came. Amar Lahem, he told him, I know why you're not coming to me. This is what Revelia told me when he made me Gabbai. You think I'm giving you some type of position of authority, some type of COVID, some type of benefit, but you got that all wrong. You know what I'm giving you? Turning on Talmud base. So when Revelia Shmuel called me over, and Revelia said, I never knew where it came from. I just discovered now where it came from. So you see that Tsuroros becoming a leader is referred to as an Eved. This is in Malachim. Let's see who it's referring to. Does the article say who it was referring to? Which leader it was referring to? Where does it say it? It's in Malachim. Oh, it's when Rechavam ben Shlomo. When Rechavam was appointed as a king, so the elders told him, we're giving you others. Taner Rabbanim, Asher Nasi Yechta. If a Nasi doesn't have air. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mezakai, Ashrei Hadar. Fortunate is the dar. Shanasi Shaloi may be carbon al Shivagosai. That a Nasi brings a carbon for his Avera. Why? Im Nasi Shaloi may be carbon. Sarach Ataloimar Mau Hedjit. If a Nasi brings a carbon, surely a head is a Rashi Klemer Mamelach. She'engli by Kafif. Margish who may be carbon al Shilgasai. A Melach who has an ego, who could have an ego, he's not bottled to anybody. Still, you see, he has a soft heart, and he's Moidala Emes, and he's Machni to Rabbi Shalom, and he brings a carbon. Surely a Hedit will do tshuva because they're not so tough. They already have a softer heart. The Imal Shilgasai may be carbon, Tarach Ataloima or Mauzadoinoi, and if he does tshuva for a shaygig, surely he's going to do tshuva for a maze. Maska Florava Barei Derabba. So you're telling me anytime it says Asher, it means it's a good thing. What about this Asher Chata Mina Kodesh Yishalem? It's talking about someone who's Moel Behektish. Is that a good thing that somebody who's Moel Behektish? Or Ubiyarav ben Nevat, who's a terrible Balavera? Dichsiv Be Asher Chata VaAsher Hechti. That's good too. That Yeravam was a chayte and a machdi is a rabbin. Hachanami the Ashrei Adoru. Zaktimora shiny hacha the shani krabedibure. The word Asher by itself does not mean that it's good. But when the Torah introduced all the different karbanos for the Kohen Mashiach, for the Hel Shel Tzibor, it didn't say Asher, it said Ve'im. The fact that the Torah purposely used a different word, that's what we're being medayik. That's where we're being medayik Ashrei. But the word Asher by itself doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good thing. It says Yesh Hevel. This is of course in Koheles. Yesh Hevel Asher Nasa LaOretz Ashreim LaTzadikim Shemagia Aleim Kamais HaRishoyim. Fortunate are the tzaddikim that they receive the treatment of the Rishoyim. I'm sorry. So let's look at the whole pasuk inside. It says, Yesh Hevel Asher Nasa Ala Oretz Asher Yesh Tzadikim Asher Magia Aleim Kamais HaRishoyim. There are tzaddikim who get the treatment of a rasha. The Yesh Rishoyim Shel Magia Aleim Kamais HaTzadikim. And there are Rishoyim that get the treatment fit for tzaddikim. Amarti Shagam Zehevel. So what does that mean? Ashreim tzaddikim shemagia aleim k'ma'aser rishonim shel olam haba ba'olam hazeh. They get the punishment that rishonim are going to receive in olam haba. The tzaddikim already get that punishment in olam hazeh, so therefore they're clean. And when they come up to Shemayim Losad Lavoi, they're completely pure. And the olam rishonim shemagia aleim k'ma'aser tzaddikim shel olam haba ba'olam hazeh. They get all their payment on this world, so when they go up to the next world, they'll be only punished. So to Rava, you don't forget tzaddikim should have it good in olam hazeh and in olam haba. Other tzaddikim yiachlu trei almi misani lahu. Is that such a bad thing? You're saying Ashreim tzaddikim. I could tell you, I can give you a whole list of tzaddikim that would consider themselves lucky if they had both olam hazeh and olam haba. What do you mean? Fortunate are them that they have tsar and olam hazeh. Ela Amar Rava. Ashreim l'tzadikim shemagia aleim k'ma'aser rishonim shel olam hazeh b'olam hazeh. Lucky are the tzadikim who receive even olam hazeh in olam hazeh. Oilahem l'rishonim. So lucky are the tzadikim that they say get olam hazeh and they say get olam haba. Oilam l'rishonim shemagia aleim k'ma'aser tzadikim shel olam hazeh b'olam hazeh. And woe are to the rishonim that they get punished in olam hazeh. Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Baredi, Rav Yeshua, also look come to Rav. Rav Papa and Rav Huna, Baredi, Rav Yeshua came to Rav. Amalahu, he asked them, Ukimtin Masechta Plan or Masechta Plan. Did you happen to have learned these two Masechtas? So Rav asked Rav Papa and Rav Huna, Baredi, Rav Yeshua, have you learned these two Masechtas? Amrulayin, they said yes, we did. So he told them, oh, that means Isra Srichu Purta. You must have a few dollars. Why? Because if you have time to learn these two Masechtas, you have so much time to be able to learn, it must be that you have a couple of dollars, you're not Torah and Parnasa. Amrulayin, they said, as a matter of fact, we are quite successful. The Zavnon continued the Ara. We bought a small piece of land, and we make money off that land. We're not billionaires, but Baruch Hashem, we have freedom. So Kari Alayu, Rav Papa said, Rava said in reference to them, Ashreim l'tzadikim shemagia aleim k'ma'aser rishonim sheba'olam hazeh ba'olam hazeh. You got freedom even in olam hazeh. You don't mitzvah for panosa. You are doing quite well. You're able to learn. So you see, that's how he attached the pasuk as well. That tzadikim have the benefit of having a good olam hazeh and a good olam. Amar Rabbi Bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. My dechsiv. It says in the pasuk, Ki yisharim darkei Hashem. V'tzadikim yelchuba. Tzadikim follow the righteous ways of the Rebbeinu Shalom, but u'poshim yikoshlim. Now it's interesting because the Noid of Yehuda was a big misnagid, but Chassidim they say he rots and harini muchumzun, they say all the shtiklach, and he was very against that. So in reference to Chassidim who say all these harini muchumzuns, the Noid of Yehuda writes, Ki yisharim darkei Hashem, v'tzadikim yelchubam, v'chassidim yikoshlim. That's what he wrote. He wrote about it. Anyway, two people did the same thing. You can do the same mitzvah, but if you have a different attitude, it's going to change the whole thing. He may not have been the kind of mitzvah in a movker, but you should call him a Rasha. Amalei Rish Lakish, Rasha Karislei, Nidal Yav is mitzvah in a movker. Hasach Mikvele Kachel, he was Makari the mitzvah of carbon pesach. No, not in the best way. Ella, I'll tell you what you could compare it to. And it's dark, and he doesn't know who's in bed with him. Someone who had relations with his wife, and the other one didn't know who he was with in the bed, and it turned out being his sister. He was Chayv Koros. They did the same Maisa. They did a Maisa Bia. But the Erlicha one is Tzadikam Yelchim, he got his wife. Again, that's not a good comparison. Mi Dami, Anan Kamrinan Chada Derech. We're talking about they both did the exact same thing. Clearly, these two people, one was a Choisoi, one was Ishtoi, that's not the same thing. Compared to Loit and Shtei B'Noisav, they both engaged in the same act of Bia. They did it l'shem mitzvah because they thought there was no world yet and they wanted to procreate. So therefore, they say about Nois Loit tzadikim yachubam hushin eschavin l'shem aveya upoishim yikoshluba. How do you know what Loit was thinking? Maybe he was also mechaven that he wanted to make sure there'll be a procreation in the world. I'll tell you how I know. It's kol pasuk azeh l'shem aver nemar. The whole pasuk that discusses the story of Lot is darshaned in the Gemara to tell us that it was all with an aver. Nemar, it says vayisa Lot. It says vayisa Lot, and he saw Shechem, and he decided he wanted to go in that direction. Right? That's what the pasuk says. Vayisa Lot is einav vayar is kol kikar yarden kichula mishka. It was geshmaka fertile soil. Lefnei shachis Hashem esadoim v'esamoira. This was before Hashem destroyed Sodom. Kagan Hashem carried Mitzrayim. So it says Vayisa Lot. We compare it to Vatisa Eshes Adoinav Esainel, where Eshes Potiphar wanted to do a chet with Yosy. Es Einav, Lavan lifted up his eyes. That's referring to Vayirmi Shimshon Oisa Kach Li Ki Yishar Be'enai. His parents told Shimshon, marry a nice Jewish girl. Why are you looking but a Pelishtim? He said, no, Ki Yishar Be'enai. Again, chet. Vayar Oisa Shechem Ben Chamor. Chamor lusting over Dinah. As called Kikar Yarden, that we compare to the pasuk could be at Isha Zoyna at Kikar Lachem, which the pasuk tells us someone who runs Pasuk Zoynis, he ends up losing his parnasa and he struggles to even get at Kikar Lachem. Kichulu Mishka, which is referring to the beautiful fertile soil of Sodom before it was Sodom. Elcha Acharei Mahavai, a woman wants to go Liznus. Nicely lachmi umeimai, because he gives me bread and water, tzirmi upishti, clothing, shamni mo'el shikuya, and to drink. Frank to Gemara, I don't understand. Well, main is honest. Lot didn't know. How could you blame Lot? He didn't know. He was sleeping when they came to be with him. So we're talking about Rabbi Chuni, Lama Nokat Alavav Shebekuma. It says V'layada b'shivcha uvekuma. Lot didn't know when they came and when he woke up. Where the first daughter came to sleep with him the first night. Loimalach should tell you, Hitaka didn't know anything when she came in, and therefore that was a total oinus. He was sleeping at the time. When he woke up, he knew that something happened that night before, and he should have been careful. So what's he supposed to do? It's too late. She slept with him. It's done. She shouldn't have drank the next day, so that this shouldn't happen again. And he did the same thing, and the second daughter was born on him, so you see he had bad intentions. Dorish Rabbi Maidich Siv. Ach Nivsha Mikiryas Ois. My brother was Nivsha from Kiryas Ois, from strength. Umijonim Kavriach Armon. So we dash an Ach Nivsha Mikiryas Ois. A brother ran from Kiryas Ois. Jaloit, it's referring to Loit. Shapiresh Me Avram, who separated from Avram, who was Kiryas Ois, who was tough, he was strong. He separated himself from the fortification of being near Avram. Umijonim Kavriach Armon. It means what did Lot's leaving cause? Shehitel mijonim ben Yisrael la'amon. Midonim are fights. He created separation between Klal Yisrael and his own child, the nation of Ammon. Shenemar lo yavi amoni ume'avi b'kalashem. Dorish Rabbi V'Temer B'Tchumadich Siv L'Taiva Yivakesh Nifrad B'Chol Toshia Yiskala. Someone who separates himself for Taiva, for Isser, he will lose everything. All his wisdom will be lost. So Zok to Gemara Widash Latavi Vakish Nifrad, who's that referring to? Zaloich Nifrad Me'avram, and therefore B'chol Toshir Yiskala, in all of his wisdom will be Mevuza sheniskala kloinoi bevatech nesiyos uvat midrashers. Everyone knows the bezayin of light because everyone knows the Tanam Amoni umoyavi asur in Israel. Mamula Tamar Zinsa. Tamar did an avera. She was mizana with Yehuda. Vizimri Zina, and Zimri also did an avera. What's the difference? Tamar Zinsa yatsu mimena malachim unavim. She built nachos based of it. Zimri Zina naflu kama rivais misrael led to a horrible magefa that Pinchas had to stop. Amar Nachma Yitzchak gedoyla avera lishma. Greater is the doing an avera lishma may mitzvah shaloi lashma. Shenamar it says tevayrech minasham yal eshes chever akeni minasham ba'oil tevurach. She should be more blessed than the Nashim in the oil. She was the one who risked her life to kill Sisera, but she also had to let him be boiler 7 times. So she literally sacrificed herself to save Klal Yisrael. Manini, Nashim ba'oil. Who are we comparing her to? Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. They refer to as Nashim ba'oil. Any b'mar b'yuda amarav lo yasek adam b'tayra uva mitzvahs afilu shaloi l'shma shemitach shaloi l'shma bal l'shma. How could you say that an avera l'shma is better than Torah shaloi l'shma and mitzvah shaloi l'shma is great? Zot Gemara ema ke mitzvah shaloi l'shma. An avera l'shma is like a mitzvah shaloi l'shma. It's they both have benefits to them and they both bring schuyos. Sisera was boil yal 7 times. Shnemar bein raglea kara nofal. That's 1 and 2. Shachav, and then it says again bein raglea kara nofal, and then it says again nofal. So it says a total of 7 times. Frank Gemara, how could you say that it's it's a good thing? She was enjoying the avera. She was novellas to him 7 times. What would be considered a pleasurable act when someone's doing it with a rasha is so repulsive to a tzaddik that would be something that's horribly disgusting to her. There was no pleasure that she received from these bias. Why? Shebischar men base karbanos. Shehikriv Balak harasha. Balak brought 42 karbanos in his situation there with Bilam. He definitely didn't do it l'shma. He did it l'shem avera. Zacha v'yatza mimenu rus. He was able to have a enikol rus. Dam Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina. Rus was bas benoi shel Eglain. She was the grandchild of Eglain. Ben benoi shel Balak, and Eglain was the grandson of Balak Melech Moav. So you see, Balak Melech Moav for bringing karbanos. God Himself connected to Malchus based of it. Even something nice said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pay for that. She called her son Moav, which is literally advertising Me'av. That's not a nice name. Not very not nice way of speaking. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell us about the nation of Moav? Al Tatzer es Moav, Ba'al Tisker Bam Milchama. Don't fight with them in war. So Zak Gemara Milchama, who Deloy. The only thing you should refrain from is actually fighting a war with them. Who Deloy. Hatziri Tarinu, but you're allowed to chepe them a little bit. You're allowed to cause them trouble with Moav. But Vilu Tzeira, the Karya Ben Ami, she only said Ben Ami. There she said Al Tatzurim Al Tiskubam Kalal Afilu Tzurloi. Why? Because she was a little bit more tzniistic, and therefore her nation wasn't even going to be shepherded by Klal Yisrael. I was once at a shir. Shimon Shalom slept me to a blatcher that Al Yashiv used to give a blatcher every single day. It was a sight to see because people were screaming and hacking, and it was a fascinating shir. So we were learning the Gemara that says that when David HaMelech found out that he was going to die on the Shabbos, he made sure never to stop learning on Shabbos, even for a nanosecond, so that the Sultan couldn't get to him to kill him. So someone screamed out, Torah Shaloi L'Shma. Would David HaMelech have learned Torah Shaloi L'Shma? So without skipping a beat, Rabbi Yasher says, "Uvos ishlecht v'Torah Shaloi L'Shma Bol L'Shma." So you see, he had a pretty good sense of humor, because without skipping a beat, David HaMelech, the last day of his life, is Torah Shaloi L'Shma Bol L'Shma. Then there was another place where there was a Gemara that was repeated twice, and Rashi only comments on the second time the Gemara is repeated, not the first time. So somebody asked Rabbi Yashiv, how come Rashi only is Ma'ir this over here, not in the Friedrich shtickle? So Rabbi Yashiv said again without skipping a beat, Vosis ain't muktim and mucher b'toyer. So he had a cute sense of humor at 100 years old. Okay, everyone should have an awesomely wonderful day.